Okay, well, thank you, Roberta, for inviting me. My name is Evan Weiner. I started this racket in 1971. I was at Spring Valley High School, which is in Rockland County, New York. About 35 miles of Midtown Manhattan. I was in 11th grade. And Joe Dionisio, my teacher, said, student, you have a good voice. How would you like to be in radio? And I said, I want to be in radio in the worst way. And I was. Show called Tiger Talk, named after our high school WRKL radio, every Tuesday afternoon at 3:45, and it was a horrendous show, but it was a door opener. And Joe also opened the door for me to work at the Nyack Journal News. I did 3 stints at the Bergen Record and doing op-eds about 15 years ago. And I ended up on WNEW radio by the age of 21 because John Lindsay told me, the former mayor of New York City, that he was running for Senate. And WNEW radio was the home of Frank Sinatra, Nat King Cole, Sammy Davis, that kind of music. And Henry Marcotte is on the desk. It's March of 1978. And he says, how would you like to do that for us? I said, sure. How much are you going to pay me? He said, $10. I said, sold. And among the people I talked to or interviewed while I was doing some work for WNEW included Ronald Reagan, Ted Kennedy, Jack Kemp, and a number of others. The reason I bring up WNEW is pretty simple, because WNEW radio was the home of the New York Giants, and that's Phil Simms. Me and Phil Simms in 1982 at Pace University, Pleasantville, New York. Phil would be an MVP of the Super Bowl in 1987 when the New York Giants defeated the Denver Broncos. The Super Bowl is a big deal. It has to be a big deal because it was created by Congress. It took an act of Congress to create the Super Bowl, because the American Football League and the National Football League had to merge. The Boston Patriots, of course, a member of the American Football League back in the 1960s, and Nick Buoniconti, who played with the Patriots back then, told me that if you looked at ticket stubs real closely for the Boston Patriots at stadium to TBA, to be announced, because they went from stadium to stadium in the Boston area before they went to Foxborough. The merger was tacked on to an anti-inflation bill, which was signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson back on November the 8th, 1966. Before I get into the Super Bowl story of past, let's talk about the Super Bowl story of present, Tampa this weekend. The security. The Super Bowl is the second most secured event in the United States behind the presidential inaugurals, but that only happens once every 4 years. So this is the most secure event in the United States, 3 out of every 4 years. It's a SEER 1 level event. The Super Bowl is a special events assessment rating level 1 event. There are 50 agencies who are involved with the Secret Service, the lead agency. Everybody takes orders from them. In the Tampa area, they've been working for 1.5 years to secure the area. They've actually been in Florida for the last 2.5 years because Miami area had the Super Bowl last year. There is no word on how much it costs taxpayers to provide security. The NFL does not pay any money to help secure the event. The other agencies that take the or follow the lead of the Secret Service include the FBI, FEMA, TSA, the Customs and Border Patrol, because you got to crack down on those counterfeit items, and the local police. In this case, Tampa, probably Hillsborough County, maybe Pinellas County, Polk County, and the Florida State Police, all part of the security team. Now, the 1964-1965 American Football League All-Star Game is where the Super Bowl really starts. If you're looking at this picture of Butch Bird, who played with Buffalo, Earl Faison, who played with San Diego, Curtis McClinton, who played with Kansas City, and a guy like that, I'm not sure who he is, but he's looking down. And if you look at Curtis's hand, there are airplane tickets there. The reason why they're holding airplane tickets, they're getting out of town. They are supposed to be in New Orleans. They are supposed to be playing a football game, the American Football League All-Star Game. And at halftime, if everything went according to plan, New Orleans was going to land an American Football League franchise. But as the old poet said, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. This one goes awry. A quick background to the beginning of the Super Bowl and how it came about includes the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Jim Crow, New Orleans, a players' boycott, Louisiana Senator Russell Long, the congressman from Louisiana and the father of the late Cokie Roberts from NPR and ABC TV, Hale Boggs, the Brooklyn, New York representative, Emmanuel Seller. They're all part of the Super Bowl creation, both by accident and design. Ron Mix played with the San Diego Chargers most of his career. He started in Los Angeles with the Chargers in 1960. The team moves to San Diego in 1961. You might remember in 1963, San Diego beat Boston in the AFL title game. And I've known Ron Mix for a while. He's now in his 80s. He was a lawyer. And is still around, still pretty active, actually. And about 7 years ago, I called him because I wanted to know about this game that wasn't played and what was going on in the National Basketball Association at the time with the Los Angeles Clippers and the players who threatened to strike if Donald Sterling remained the owner of the Clippers. They were going to strike in the playoffs. And all because Sterling was speaking to his mistress. And he told his mistress, I want black guys around the basketball game. Don't bring them here. Players heard it and said they're going on strike. Eventually, marketing partners pulled out in the NBA. Adam Silver, the commissioner, pulled the franchise from Sterling. So I asked Ron, what was the difference between what happened in New Orleans with this game that was never played, which obviously is a consequential event in football history, and Los Angeles Clippers? And he said there was no comparison. These were a bunch of players upset with their boss, and rightfully so. And we were playing for civil rights in New Orleans. We were aware that New Orleans was hosting the game, the AFL All-Star game, to demonstrate to the American Football League and the National Football League, New Orleans, could support the football franchise. The last thing we wanted to do was assist them in demonstrating they could support the franchise. A boycott was the only alternative for the players. That's Walter Beach, and you have to be a real Boston Patriots fan or New England Patriots fan to know who he is. But he was with the team in 1960. He came out of Central Michigan University. He was a defensive back, and in 1961, Boston was scheduled to go down to New Orleans to play a preseason game. And Walter Beach told Mike Hollaback, who is the Patriots coach and GM, and the owner, Billy Sullivan, look, I'm a football player, and I don't want any of that Green Book stuff down there. I'm not going to go and stay with a host family. I'm not going to eat meals in their house. I'm not going to go on the other side of town, take a broken down bus to the other side of town, stay in a dive, and eat in a dive. He said, I'm a football player as much as everybody else is on this team. And so I'm not taking this trip to New Orleans and being treated like that. No Green Book stuff for me. Well, Walter Beach was fired by Billy Sullivan and the Boston Patriots organization in 1961. He was labeled a troublemaker because he wanted to organize a protest among the black players against the segregated living conditions during the team's road trip to New Orleans, which really wasn't much of a road trip. It was about 36 hours overnight. Generally, football teams just fly into the city the day before, play the game, and then get out. Beach ended up with the Cleveland Browns in 1962. He was part of the championship team in 1964. He's still alive. And his civil rights sports career extended beyond the Cleveland Browns because after Muhammad Ali refused induction into the armed forces in Houston, Texas in April of 1967, Beach was part of a group called the Cleveland Summit that was put together by Jim Brown. My buddy Walt Flea Roberts was one of the people there, along with a very young Lou Alcindor, and they checked out Ali to see if he was legitimately a conscientious objector to the war in Vietnam, or if he just wanted to get out of the armed forces. They were convinced that Ali was legit. He had his boxing license taken away, his championships taken away, and his livelihood taken away, and these guys were helping him through that rough period. And Shelley Saltman, who came from Boston, whose best friend was Leonard Nimoy growing up in the Boston area. And Leonard Nimoy's father, Max Nimoy, was the barber. Barry Morse was there, Barbara Walters there, David Susskind and Leonard Bernstein, all in that area of Boston. Anyway, he was Ali's promoter in 1971 through 79, including the Ali Frazier fight. We talked about it, and the late Shelley Saltman passed away 2 years ago, said, yeah, Ali was legit. Cookie Gilchrist was a running back with the Buffalo Bills, and he got a cab from the New Orleans airport to the hotel where he was staying in New Orleans, where the American Football League players were staying. Cookie Gilchrist got a cab because Jack Kemp, who's the Buffalo quarterback, who's also the president of the American Football League Players Association, who also had an aspiring political career, hailed the cab and told Cookie to come in. And under Jim Crow customs in the South, if a white man said, this guy is with me, the colored guy, it was cool. He could take the cab, share the cab ride. And Cookie Gilchrist shared the ride with Jack Kemp. But his other teammates, about 21 of them at that time in New Orleans, African-American teammates, were stuck at the airport. There was no ride to the airport for them. Jim Crow customs, you could not, if you were colored, get a cab. So immediately there is trouble brewing in New Orleans. The New Orleans business leaders, led by David Dixon, said that we need a team here. And Dixon had the support of the governor of Louisiana. He also had the support of the mayor of New Orleans. And all the leaders said, hey, you know what, AFL All-Stars, we're going to welcome you with open arms. You know, bring your families. You can play golf. You can have fun, all this other stuff. And yeah, no problem with the 22 black players you have on your roster. Segregation, thing of the past. Jim Crow, that's a thing of the past. Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Balance Act on July 7th, 1964, and we desperately want a professional football team. And there could be one available from the American Football League, which started in 1959 and play started in 1960. New Orleans was passed over by the NFL, but Dixon and everybody else in town said, we're ready, we'll take an AFL team. And Lamar Hunt, who founded the American Football League in 1959, along with Bud Adams, Lamar in Dallas, Bud Adams in Houston, and they were all set to take in New Orleans. This was going to be a good thing. Equals. Now, one thing about the American Football League was that white players and black players were equal. And you could see this program of the second annual AFL All-Star Game in Balboa Stadium in San Diego. And look at the players, Jim Coklaw, who played with the Patriots, Bud McFadden, who played in Denver, Cookie Gilchrist, an African-American, played in Buffalo, Larry Grantham from the New York Titans. They were the no, they were still the Titans. Fred the Hammer Williamson with Kansas City, he was African-American. Earl Faison, San Diego, African-American. So you look at this and you begin to realize that the American Football League was treating black players equally with white players, which was not happening in the National Football League. The American Football League at the time was truly the only league to really embrace African-American players as equal on the field to white players. NFL scouts, well, they went to the big-time football schools, the Big Ten conferences, and they looked for players from Oklahoma and Texas and Alabama and Mississippi, and they went looking for players of that background. Meanwhile, the AFL, which started in 1960, was just looking for players wherever they could find it. They got some from the Canadian Football League. They picked some people off the streets playing semi-pro football. And they also went to the historic black schools like Grambling University in Louisiana, Bethune-Cookman in Florida, Prairie View in Texas, Texas A&I, North Carolina A&T, along with Morgan State in Maryland. So they went to look for players, and they found really good players at the black schools. Ironically, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 destroyed the black college football programs as the best players were free to attend the big-time schools: Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana State, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Florida State, University of Miami. So the Civil Rights Act ruined big-time black college football. That's my buddy Abner Haynes. Abner is about 83, 84 years old. He lives in Dallas, Texas. He was the first African-American player who played college football on a weekly basis in Texas at North Texas University in 1956. Abner, a number of years ago, said, "Hey, I want to do a biography. You interested in writing?" And I said, "You know, Abner, I could put together an 800-word op-ed, no problem, get all my points across. I could write a 40-second radio spot, get it all done, and I could go on TV and get it all done. A book, a biography about somebody, I think you better get somebody who knows what they're doing." But still, we were talking about things, and he gave me a whole bunch of stories, and I'll share one with you. It's the New Orleans story. And he and David Grayson leave Kansas City, head down to New Orleans, and the Kansas City Chiefs owner, Lamar Hunt, said, "Abner, David, name, rank, and serial number. That's it. Abner Haynes, running back, Kansas City Chiefs, member, American Football League All-Star team. David Grayson, defensive back, Kansas City Chiefs, member of the American Football League All-Star team." Abner tells the story, waiting for the cabs. The cabs eventually come because somebody makes a phone call, and somebody else makes a phone call to Bud Adams, the Houston Oilers owner, and he calls the governor of the state, and he calls the mayor of New Orleans, and they said, "Hey, our guys are there. What's going on here? You said everything was going to be cool, and it's not cool at all right now." And so it took about 3.5 hours, and finally the colored cabs were sent out for the colored players. And Abner gets in the cab with David Grayson, and they check into the Hotel Roosevelt. They have no problems checking in, but they do have a problem when they get to the elevator. Abner told me that the elevator opened up. It was one of these old-fashioned elevators, complete with the gate that you had to open up, and you saw somebody sit in their chair, and they're maneuvering it with one of those things. I don't know what you call it exactly, but it's a lever of some sort moving the elevator up and down. Today, Abner says to me, so that the door opens up, the fence opens up, and there's an elderly white woman there. And she says to David and Abner, "Hey, monkeys, monkeys, what are you doing here?" The rest is Abner's story, as he told me. They had a woman operating the elevator, and she said, "You monkeys, come on in and get to the back." Finally, we had 10 or 12 guys in the room. We're talking sensibly. We're going to stay together. This was just another test. Well, what happened was all these stories started coming in, from not being able to get a cab, to being called names, to Ernie Ladd and Earl Faison and a couple other guys trying to go somewhere, a bar, and having a bouncer saying, because they were in Bourbon Street, they're going to have a good time in Bourbon Street, and having a bouncer say, "I wouldn't go in there if I were you." And Ernie Ladd, "I'm going in." "No, I wouldn't go in there if I were you." And then the guy proceeds to take out the gun and all that other stuff, and the players flee. So they get back to the hotel, and they decide they need to talk about this, whether or not they're going to play. And pretty much it was decided even before they were going to play, make this decision, they weren't going to play. They stayed behind. Most of the players went to practice, and the black guys weren't there. Ron Mix and Jack Kemp were in the meeting there, trying to figure out whether or not they should help make them make a decision. The head of the NAACP said, "Hey guys, come on, let's play. You know, things will get better here." But these guys decided, you know, we're not going to play. Abner said, "We had no leverage. We weren't playing for money. That's one thing they weren't playing for. But we were playing for progress. Football players took the lead." He's right. In sports, football players did take the lead. Walter Beach with the Boston Patriots in 1961. I mean, there's no Randolph here. There's no Rosa Parks here. There's no Martin Luther King. In fact, these guys, this all takes place over about 36 hours. There's no Martin Luther King, no SNCC, no Southern Conference leadership, no Southern Christian Conference leadership group, nobody. It's all on these guys, white guys too. Places like Atlanta, New Orleans, Miami were death holes. Dave Grayson could get a drink at our bar. Our white teammates in New Orleans were there for us. Guys like him, Jack Kemp. It's me in 1979 interviewing Congressman Jack Kemp, Spark Hill, New York, May of 1979. I'm just 23 years old. And Jack was running for president in 1980. It's the first guy I ever interviewed that was running for president. And we were talking about that. And then we talked about the AFL All-Stars in 1965. And we became pretty good acquaintances over a 30-year period. And Jack had a lot to lose here by supporting the black players. He could have lost his job as the starting quarterback of the Buffalo Bills. He could have lost his job as a quarterback just because he supported these guys, and he could have lost his political career. He was a Barry Goldwater delegate in 1964 at the convention. He also campaigned for Barry Goldwater in Western New York. He would eventually become a congressman from the Buffalo area, and that's where we were talking then. Years later, I showed Jack the picture. I said, hey, you know, somebody gave this to me years and years ago. I've never shown it to you. So you might as well sign it for me and all that other stuff. And he laughed and he looked at it. He said, what happened to your hair? And I said, what happened to your wig? It used to be brown. It was that color. That's my son. This is the Arizona Biltmore in Phoenix. My son's 17 at the time. And Jack says to him, hey, come on, let's have a drink together. I said, Jack, he's 17. Why don't you mind your business? I'm taking him for a drink at the bar. You know, it's a religious ceremony. Skull. I said, but Jack, he's underage. He said, what do you want also? So that was the kind of relationship I had with Jack. So Jack was a congressman. He ran for president in 1980. Never got any traction in the Republican primary, but was Robert Dole's running mate in 1996 when he ran for vice president. Of course, this is 7 years after and different way. Abner again. One of the things we, the AFL, needed was the unity of the white and black players for a new league. When the white players, Jack Kemp, Jerry Mays, who was our Kansas City defensive leader, 4 or 5 other guys, heard about what was happening, their character showed, and my teammates were looking after me. These guys did vote to boycott. They weren't going to play. Game is called off in New Orleans. It would be played in Houston, which wasn't that much better than New Orleans, according to Abner and others, but they knew that there was a team there, so they knew what they could do in Houston as opposed to New Orleans. So New Orleans is out. Dave Dixon was a bitter man. He was the guy who wanted a football team there. And he told the New York Times the boycotters had unjustly sullied New Orleans' reputation, complaining their militant action would not only damage the city, but would greatly retard efforts by men of goodwill of both races to achieve harmony. New Orleans is on the outside looking in. Their football future, as far as the pros go, there wasn't any football future. The AFL turned them down, and the NFL wasn't touching New Orleans because it was radioactive. The boycott. New Orleans on the outside looking in. Eventually, New Orleans would become a political pawn. The Super Bowl would rise out of the ashes of Jim Crow and the New Orleans boycott. The American Football League and the National Football League announced a merger plan, June 8th, 1966. But the two entities could not become one without permission from Congress. It was Lamar Hunt and it was Texas E. Schramm, the guy who gave the Dallas Cowboys the nickname America's Team because he felt that Dallas had to do something after the Kennedy assassination on November 22nd, 1963. So Schramm and Tex Schramm and Lamar meet underneath the Lone Ranger statue at Love Field. Love Field, the airport in Dallas. Love is all around. Love Field was where the body of John F. Kennedy was taken to put on a flight to Washington after he was killed in Dallas. So we got ourselves an engagement party or an engagement. Now let's see if we could get this marriage done. And we got to convince the parents. The parents here, House of Representatives and the Senate, and there's only one man for this job, and it's him. Alvin Roy Pete Rozelle, the commissioner of the National Football League. This is during the USFL NFL antitrust trial back in 1986. Me with a tie. I wore a tie in those days. I even wore a jacket, but it was a hot day in Manhattan, so the jacket's in the car. And somebody must have said something funny because me and Pete are kind of laughing at something back in 1986 during the USFL NFL trial. A sports commissioner, by definition, at least definition of sports leagues, is a hardened political lobbyist. And Rozelle was an old hand around Capitol Hill by the summer of 1966. He's in his 7th year on the job. In 1961, Rozelle had some envy of the American Football League because the American Football League, all 8 of its teams were sharing television revenue from ABC. It wasn't all that much money, and ABC was only a half network in those days. But Rozelle wanted the same thing for the NFL, and he wanted the ability to negotiate a contract with either CBS or NBC, get in a bidding war with the two of them, and the NFL would make a ton of money. He also wanted what baseball had, an antitrust exemption, but baseball got theirs in 1922. And they could package their 16, then 18, then 20 teams as one and sell it to a network. It was always NBC in those days. Rozelle wanted that for the NFL. He saw the AFL had it, he wanted it. And so he goes to Emanuel Celler, the Brooklyn Democrat, in the House, and he says, I want this. Celler does do the bidding. In 2 days, he has a bill ready to go up to the Senate. Estes Kiefhauer in Tennessee, he's done with it in a day. It goes up to Kennedy's desk. The Sports Broadcast Act of 1961, signed into law by John Kennedy, September 30th of that year, and it allowed the NFL to bundle 14 franchises and sell them as a package of games to a TV network. The law helped propel the NFL into a different economic orbit. Green Bay would get the same TV money as the New York Giants, and back in the late 1950s, the New York Giants TV territory included all of New England and Boston. By the way, the guy who cut the AFL deal with ABC is a guy by the name of Jay Michaels. You might know his son if you're a football fan, Al Michaels, Sunday night football commentator on NBC. Al started his career as a gopher on Let's Make a Deal, and then graduated to the dating game where he helped put together the couple that would win the dating game. So, and then he went into sportscasting. These are 2 of the 3 men who are most responsible for the Super Bowl. Russell Long. He is the Louisiana senator, a Democrat from Louisiana, and Lyndon Johnson. And Pete Rozelle has to go to Washington. Mr. Rozelle goes to Washington, object to get a merger. And he meets with Russell Long, Louisiana Democrat, Senate Majority Whip, chairman of the Senate Financial Committee. And he also meets with Hale Boggs. Hale Boggs, a congressman from Louisiana, the father of Cokie Roberts, who was lost in a plane crash in Alaska about 7 or 8 years after this happened. But anyway, Long and Boggs were not very excited about this planned football merger because, let's face it, New Orleans didn't have a team, and why should they vote for it if New Orleans wasn't going to get a team? They didn't have a shot with the AFL. They blew their shot with the AFL and no shot with the NFL. And they said to Rozelle, well, how about expanding? And Rozelle said, well, there are 24 teams here. We don't have enough quarterbacks. We don't have enough players for 24 teams. So no, we're not going to expand. And Long and Boggs said, well, no need for us to vote. And if Long says no, then the other Louisiana senator is going to say no, along with senators in Alabama, Mississippi, just 45 minutes or so away from New Orleans, Arkansas, maybe Texas, Tennessee, and they'd bring all those numbers, and those numbers would bring the merger down. So there is a problem here, a big problem that Rozelle and company have to settle. And they come up with a plan. Shea Stadium in New York. Shea Stadium in New York, home of the New York Jets and the home of Joe Namath. Now, in 1964, David Sarnoff on NBC lost his bid to get CBS on the NFL on NBC. he called up the Jets owner, Sonny Werblin. Sonny Werblin was in television. He was with MCA TV with Lou Wasserman, and MCA supplied programming to networks, programming like Leave It to Beaver and The Munsters. Those are some of their shows that they supplied. And Sarnoff calls Werblin and says, Sonny, how much should that SOB, the SOB being Bill Paley, the chairman of the board of CBS, founder of CBS, back in 1927, how much should that SOB give them? $35 million. He said, here's $35 million and $1, go build yourself a league. And with that, he would sign Joe Namath, John Ewan, and a whole bunch of others. And the AFL had money to sign players. And a bidding war would start. And that bidding war, with Pete Gogolak jumping over from the Buffalo Bills to the New York Giants, started getting out of hand. Gogolak was the Buffalo kicker. And so one of the proposals to get, first of all, the NFL did not want two teams in the market like New York, the Jets and Giants, or San Francisco, the 49ers or the Oakland Raiders. So they come up with this plan, and this is the plan. Let's satisfy Louisiana interests. We'll move the Jets franchise. Well, Sonny, the owner, he's got Hollywood connections. He might be interested. And Namath, the quarterback, he's good looking. You know, he's doing these commercials, and he's the toast of the town in Manhattan and all that. Hey, he could easily do that in Hollywood as well. In fact, he wants to be an actor. It would help him out later on in his career. We'll throw some money at Daniel Reeves to get him out of Los Angeles and go down to San Diego. They'll replace the AFL Chargers. Barrett Hilton, he's got business interests in New Orleans. He's got the hotels, the Hilton family hotels there. So maybe he'll go down there. That takes care of New Orleans, and then we'll figure out later on what to do with Oakland. We'll either move him to Seattle or Portland. But again, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry, and this one goes awry. It's literally dead on arrival because Rozelle has to go to talk to Emanuel Celler about this in the subcommittee on antitrust. And Celler basically said, hey, listen, you know, I'm in Brooklyn. My district abuts Shea Stadium in Queens. I have a lot of constituents that go to Jets games because you can't get tickets to Giants games, so they go to Jets games. It's got a big parking lot, about 10,000 cars at Shea Stadium, so they could drive there. Or they could take a bus, or they could take the subway. No. This is a non-starter. It's dead on arrival. And Rozelle reluctantly agreed. And the agreement was no teams would be moved because of the merger. And they can only move as of 1970 if their stadium seated less than 50,000, which the Boston Patriots fell in that. But Billy Sullivan was going down to Foxborough by that time. But Patriots could have been one of them, Chicago Bears, Minnesota Vikings. New Orleans, I was at Mardi Gras 2 years ago. Screwed that. Fire Truck Crew, 2019, hot nuts. And he's wearing a referee's shirt. He probably had the glasses on, blind as a bat, about the referee that missed the play that could have been pass interference on the Rams, LA Rams. That New Orleans could have advanced down the field, maybe score a touchdown and get to the Super Bowl in 2019. That didn't happen. And by Mardi Gras, these people 5 weeks later were still upset about the call. Rozelle and the owners work out a deal with Hale Boggs. They place a team in New Orleans. Congress approves the merger of the two competitors on the back of an anti-inflation tax bill. Like somebody in Congress is going to say, yeah, let's vote for inflation. Let's vote for inflation. Isn't that great? Well, they didn't do that. And that happened on October 21st, 1966. The NFL said 10 days later, we're going to put a team in New Orleans. But 10 days later was Halloween. Not a great day to put a team in there. This is a grateful owner. The Detroit Lions owner, William Clay Ford, to Gerald Ford. Who was a congressman at that point from Michigan. A sincere thank you for your able assistance in bringing about congressional approval of the NFL-AFL merger. The passage of this bill will now allow merger plans to go ahead full speed. Important is also that the first championship game between the two leagues will now be played for real in January. Gerald Ford, I guess, helped create the Super Bowl. There's Hale Boggs, who did all the negotiations to get the team into New Orleans. The NFL would award its 16 franchise to New Orleans November 1st, 1966. And Johnson signed the bill into law on November 8th, 1966. And if you go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Canton, Ohio, Public Law 89-800, the Suspension of Credit Act, which carried a rider approving the merger of the National Football League and the American Football League. And it's that pen that you're seeing right there, that pen, which was actually given to Tip O'Neill. And then it was given to Rozelle and then the Football Hall of Fame. That pen creates the Super Bowl. Oh, it's all about cash, of course. The league pocketed $8 million in an expansion fee from New Orleans from the owner, John Mika. One of the co-owners of the team was David Dixon. All's well that ends well. And that was split between the 15 owners. Additionally, the New York Jets ownership, David, Sonny, as in Money Werblin, as Alec Cosell used to call him. I knew Howard too. Anyway, Werblin and the Jets ownership and the Oakland ownership were against the merger because partly Werblin and his partners, Phil Island and Leon Hess, had to pay $10 million for invading the Giants' territory, although when they took over the team in 1963, the team was there, the New York Titans of Harry Wismer. Oakland gives $8 million to the San Francisco 49ers for invading the NFL's territory or the team's territory. The AFL also agreed to pay a $7.5 million fee, an expansion fee they got from Cincinnati in 1968. So all in all, with the exception of the Giants owners and the 49ers owners, NFL owners pocketed $1 million or so, and the Giants ownership around $11 million, and the San Francisco ownership about $9 million. Not bad for doing nothing except expanding the league. Here's a question for you. A question for you if you want to win some money. Trivia question. Did Vince Lombardi ever win a Super Bowl game? Yes or no? I'll give you 5 seconds to answer it. You can put it in the chat box. If I go any further, I'm going to have to pay Merv Griffin money, and I don't want to do that. 5 seconds of that. Oh, we got an answer here. Let's see what the answer is. The answer is no. Well, let's see. Vince Lombardi. No, he didn't. The Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs played in the first American Football League, National Football League, World Championship game, January 15th, 1967. It was a game that Vince Lombardi did not want to play in because he felt, hey, I've won the NFL championship, and why should I play this Mickey Mouse League? You know, Mickey Mouse. Remember growing up as a kid back in the 1960s, hearing Mickey Mouse. It's a second-rate thing, third-rate thing. It's not very good. Do you know how much that rodent is worth? That rodent is worth billions upon billions of dollars. The house the mouse built, Disney, Mickey Mouse. About 15 years ago, Comcast tried a hostile takeover of Disney. $66 billion. The Disney people scrambled, raised the money to avoid the hostile takeover. And I keep thinking to myself, that mouse. Why is Mickey Mouse a second-rate thing? It wasn't a second-rate thing. That mouse is worth billions upon billions upon billions of dollars, and of course is the mascot for the Disney company. But the game, not so much. Maybe Lombardi was partially right. The game just really didn't generate as much interest as you think a World Championship game would. It's played in Los Angeles, and lots of empty seats. LA is a big event town. Big event. The Academy Awards, the Dodgers. When the Lakers are good, hey, they're the toast of the town. The whole bit. This should have been a big event. It wasn't. The game was held 94,000 seat Los Angeles Coliseum. Look at the ticket prices. They're $12, $10, and $6. Cheap, dirt cheap, $6. A little more expensive than a box seat at Fenway Park in those days, but $6 for a championship football game. But there were 33,000 empty seats. Last time a Super Bowl or a World Championship game was not a sellout. Lombardi had more than just to worry about playing a Mickey Mouse team. Bill Paley founded CBS in 1927, and he was in a war with David Sarnoff, who founded NBC rather, in 1926. And word came down to Vince that he was playing for the pride of CBS, the pride of Walter Cronkite or Eric Severin, or Mike Wallace, or Arnold the Pig on Green Acres, or Mr. Ed, or Ed Sullivan, or Lucille Ball, or Gilligan, or the Bradleys on Petticoat Junction. He's playing for their pride. He's playing for the pride of Gomer Pyle and Barney Fife. That's who he's playing for the pride of. The first game was played 26 days after the final approval of the merger between the NFL and the AFL. Both CBS and NBC televised it using the same television feed, but with different announcers and different advertisers. Paley leaned on Lombardi because he was coaching for CBS's pride. But, maybe he really wasn't, if you come to think of it, because this game doesn't exist in the annals of television history. Oh, yeah, it was videotaped, and then it just disappeared. Unfortunately, neither network decided the tape was worth anything. So they wiped out the tape. NBC wiped out the tape. I don't know. Maybe they wanted to tape over, I don't know, Hollywood Squares or Jeopardy or something. And CBS may have wanted to tape over Edge of Night or Secret Storm. The NFL about 7-8 years ago put out a reward for anybody who had the tape, no question asked. They kind of figured, well, hey, maybe, just maybe, since we cycled it out to the military, maybe somebody in the Philippines, maybe somebody in Vietnam, somebody in South Korea, somebody in Germany, got the tapes. They're big cylinders, thick tapes, 2 inches. And maybe they just threw it in their duffel bag, went home, took it home, went up, threw it in an attic and forgot about it. Maybe, just maybe it's there, but nothing has ever surfaced in the last 7-8 years. There is a copy of the game pieced together, NFL Films with film, some video that's been found over the years, and the radio broadcast. So you can see the entire game if you so choose. Mickey Mouse 3. Jerry Kramer. I do all my interviews, and I keep all my interviews. They've been transferred onto here now, disc. And they will eventually be transferred somewhere else. This is Jerry Kramer talking to me in 1988, Green Bay Packers guard. I was talking to Frank Gifford years ago, and he mentioned that he announced the first Super Bowl game. Gifford said he was fairly cool, fairly calm, relaxed, went over to put his arm on Vince's shoulder, and Lombardi's shaking like a leaf. In the 1950s, Vince was the offensive coordinator, although that wasn't the title in those days, of the New York Giants. And Frank Gifford was on that team. And Frank Gifford was Vince Lombardi's favorite player of all time. Gifford said that really made me nervous. Gifford, of course, was a CBS announcer, represented the NFL. Lombardi was playing for his pride as well. It's all about money. It's always about money. NBC, CBS, they've been warring for years and years and years. I had been warring for years and years and years. CBS and NBC charged $42,000 for a 30-second commercial. The two networks paid $9.5 million to televise the game. It goes right into the owners' pockets. The leagues couldn't even agree on which ball to use. When Green Bay was on offense, they used the Wilson Duke football, named after the Duke of Wellington, Wellington Mara, the New York Giants owner. When Kansas City had the ball, they used the AFL-sanctioned Spalding J5V. Rivals, more than just football. It was two of the big three automakers in Detroit. Ford against Chrysler. Ford owned the Detroit Lions. Major sponsor on CBS. Pete Rozelle, the commissioner, used to travel from Harrison, which is about 8 miles north of me, to work every day in Manhattan at Park Avenue, and he would be driven in a Ford station wagon. It was CBS against NBC. NBC, David Sarnoff had been mad at Bill Paley going back to 1948 when Bill Paley took Jack Benny and took Burns and Allen and others from CBS Radio and put them on CBS Radio. And Sarnoff lost bids for the NFL in 1962 and 1964. So there's a real rivalry going on there. The NFL establishment sports writers, Tex Maul from Sports Illustrated, against the AFL announcer, Curt Gowdy, the former Red Sox announcer, who also did NBC's Baseball Game of the Week. They nearly came to blows during Super Bowl III. Tex Maul never saw anything good with the AFL. Never wrote anything good about the AFL. Wasn't just a game. That all would subside, as Tex Schramm would tell me. He said the Super Bowl kind of put the icing on the cake, and the interest in the National Football League kept rolling till it was the most popular spectator sport in the United States. Tex was wrong. Tex was wrong about a lot of things. Tex talked a lot. It was in 1965 that football surpassed baseball as the most popular sport in the United States. Football game, the Super Bowl World Championship game, was played January 15th, 1967 in Los Angeles. Tex had his dates mixed up. The Super Bowl name. Well, some people began calling the American Football League, National Football League World Championship game the Super Bowl in 1968. Actually, it wasn't some people. It was just one guy, Al Davis, Oakland Raiders. And the Raiders played Green Bay in that game. So Al was front and center, as he normally was. No one could think of a proper name. The NFL commissioner, Pete Rozelle, we were talking in the 1980s about this. And we're talking about the name and all that. He says, you know, I thought Lamar Hunt's idea of calling the Super Bowl corny. I said, corny? Corny. I haven't heard that expression in 15 years. Corny. So, you know, it was like super duper, razzle dazzle. Super duper? Razzle dazzle? Corny? You must have been born in 1926. And he laughed. He said, I was. But he said in the 1940s, corny, super duper, razzle dazzle. That was, you know, those were the idioms of those days. In July 25th, 1966, letter that Hunt wrote to Rozelle, he said, I have kiddingly called it the Super Bowl, which obviously can be approved upon. Maybe not. I don't know. Let's think about that for a second. I did get to talk to Lamar about that in the late 1990s. We're in Palm Springs in NFL owners meeting. And he told me it was one of the spur of the moment things. No one ever said what we're going to call it. It was just one of those things that just came out of the mouth. It was not too inspired. Or was it? I'm going to be 65 years old in 2 months. So I remember the 1960s. I remember this going on. And there was a toy that came out in 1964. Now, hey, look, I was living in Woodside, Queens at the point. Didn't have much money. I didn't know they didn't have much money, but Hunt had a lot of money, and he's probably living in a mansion in Dallas. But there was a common denominator between me and his son, Clark Hunt, who now runs or owns the Kansas City Chiefs. It was this toy that you threw against the wall and it bounced all over the place. Lamar is home one day and he's watching his children play with a ball when he first uttered the words. They each had a super ball that my wife had given to them. And they were always talking about them. And I just used the expression Super Bowl. It was an accidental thing. Maybe it wasn't an accidental thing. The ball was great. You had the ball, you threw it against the wall, you talked to your friends about it, you talked to anybody about it. It was the greatest thing going. It was only like 19 cents, and you could be amused by it for hours and hours at a time. So it bounced and bounced and bounced and bounced. Mine was blue. I had a blue Super Bowl. Now, back in New York in those days, there were a lot of children's shows, which you don't see today. I'm sure you had them in Boston as well. Ours included Soupy Sales and Sandy Becker and Sonny Fox on Channel 5 and Captain Jack, who played Popeye commercials, and Officer Joe, rather Popeye cartoons, and Betty Boop and Officer Joe Bolton, who did Three Stooges shorts. And so I'd watch a lot of that. And there'd always be a commercial about this from Wham-O. As far as the Wham-O Super Ball, its life considerably less than the Super Bowl. It was a toy made of Zectron. A chemical engineer, Norman Stingley, found that when formed at 50,000 pounds of pressure, Zectron bounces uncontrollably. The Wham-O begins production of the ball in 1964, and we get to see the commercials selling the ball. Oh, wait a minute, those commercials, double top secret. Shh, can't tell anybody. It's the formula. Well, it wasn't a double top secret. The competitors all knew it was Zectron. But we didn't know as kids. I was 8 years old. How would I know? And the Super Bowl would eventually flounder. The Super Bowl was out of production by 1976. That is 1988. That's the summer of 1988. That's at Wingfoot Golf Course, Mamaroneck, New York, up the road from here, about 4 miles. And my buddy Bruce Morton to the left, sometimes he's on these talks with me, and we talk about Joe and the Super Bowl. Behind Joe is Weeb Ewbank, who may have won the 2 most significant games in NFL history. The game between his Baltimore Colts and the New York Giants in 1958, the so-called greatest game ever played, which fueled the popularity of pro football. And the Super Bowl from January 12, 1969, when the Jets beat Baltimore 16-7. Now, history is always written by the winners. You don't see the losers really writing much about history. Lou Michaels was a kicker with the Baltimore Colts, number 79 in your scorecard. And his brother, Walt Michaels, was the defensive coordinator of the New York Jets back in 1968. And we're in Fort Lauderdale as I bring you back. It's January 5th, 1969. It's a bar, and Lou Michaels meets Joe Namath. Joe Namath walks into this bar with Jim Hudson, who was a defensive back with the New York Jets, and he spots Lou Michaels. And Lou Michaels and his brother Walt looked the same. So Joe knew who Lou Michaels was because his brother was the Jets defensive coordinator. History is written by the winners, not the losers, but not in this case. I must say, Joe was a very cocky individual. I never expected that from Joe when he walked into the place. He had a fur coat on. I'll never forget it, the fur coat in Miami. And he points over to me instead of saying, "Hi, I'm Joe Namath." I thought he was going to introduce himself and say hello. Points over to me and says, "We're going to kick the out of you, and I'm going to do it." Joe told everybody and anybody, whoever listened to him, that the Jets were going to win. And there were quarterbacks better in the AFL than Earl Morrow, the quarterback with the Baltimore Colts. He talked about John Hadle and Darryl LaMonica, Hadle in San Diego, LaMonica in Oakland, Len Dawson over in Kansas City, and the backup Jets quarterback, Babe Parilli, the former Boston Patriots quarterback. And he told anybody and everybody, including those 2 women, "Oh, this is a news conference. Can you picture Tom Brady sitting on the Chase Lounge with now a Tampa Bay Bucks towel, entertaining the media and entertaining New York tourists who are down in Florida doing what New Yorkers do? They go down to Florida in January and February to get out of 22 inches of snow or so." And I could just picture this conversation. Gertie, you know, maybe we should walk over there because it does look like him. "Oh, Sylvia, I don't know." "Oh, come on, let's do it. Let's do it. We'll go over there." Is that you?" "That's me." "It's really you." "Oh, wait until we tell the girls about this back in the Bronx. They're never, ever going to believe it. They're never, ever going to believe it. They're not going to believe it. Are you going to win the Super Bowl?" "Yeah, we're going to win the Super Bowl." 2 women. Oh, they didn't have to worry about the girls never believing it because this picture was in the New York papers the next day and eventually in Sports Illustrated in full color. That guy behind there in the blue shirt, he can't be bothered. He can't be bothered. He must have been a guy who worked in the garment district in Manhattan because that's the way they act. That woman is like, okay, something's happening there. No big deal. Here's Joe on the little Chase Lounge, telling anybody and everybody we're going to win. Paul Zimmerman, who's with the New York Post, Larry Fox, and some others there, listening to Joe. That was a news conference in 1969 because football wasn't all that big a deal. Wasn't all that big a deal. He would change it. He would change it. Namath makes the Super Bowl important. NFL won the first two games, Green Bay, but the Jets won. Namath guarantees the Jets would win. He and his teammates deliver. But more importantly, because of Joe and the name change, it officially becomes the Super Bowl in 1969. The Super Bowl takes on an entire new life and becomes a cultural force in Americans' lives because of that. Now, under normal non-COVID circumstances, people watched the pregame show and they watched the anthem singer and they watched the halftime show and they watch commercials and they fill their mouths with food, and it's a party. It's a big, big party. 1969, it wasn't. You could get tickets to the game up to kickoff time at 4 o'clock in Miami at the Orange Bowl. There was a flimsy pregame show featuring a marching band. The Apollo 8 astronauts, Frank Borman, William Anders, Tom Hanks, Jim Lovell. Tom Hanks played Jim Lovell in Apollo 13. They had just circled the moon 2 weeks earlier, so they led the crowd in a rousing rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance. The national anthem was performed by a trumpet player by the name of Lloyd Geisler. He was with the Washington Symphony, and that was carrying on the tradition started by Al Hirt in the first game in Los Angeles. Florida A&M University Marching Band performed the halftime show. Nobody rated commercials. Nobody rated the halftime show. It was just a football game. That's all it was. In fact, the Jets left the trophy behind in the Miami Orange Bowl. Somebody forgot to take it. It got back to New York in time for the ticker. Well, it wasn't a ticker tape parade. It was a big, big crowd at City Hall, and John Lindsay had the trophy when he was honoring the Jets. Lou Michaels. So Lou Michaels is insulted by Namath. His team loses the game 16-7, and there's one more insult. He and his brother, Walt, make a bet. The bottom line is everybody gets $8,000. The winner gets 13, but everybody gets a guarantee of 8. And there's a $5,000 differential. The brothers agree that, look, the Padre over in Swoyersville at the church needs some repairs. We got to fix up the place. And we can help. We got the $5,000. And we'll take that $5,000. We'll give it to the Padre. Everything can be cool. Lou said that they agreed to that. Jets, of course, win, and Walt gets back to Swoyersville, Pennsylvania. He's got all the Jet merchandise, everything else all over the place. And Lou finds out that Walt doesn't give the $5,000 to the Padre. So out of the $8,000 that he got for participating in the game, he takes $5,000, gives it to the Padre to fix up the church. Lou Michaels is the Super Bowl's ultimate loser. In the entire history of the Super Bowl, Lou Michaels, insulted by Namath, team loses, and then his brother doesn't pay off a bet, and he has to pay off the bet. Jets victory, arguably the most important in NFL history, as Pete Rozelle once told me. He said he was mad about that, but he realized that it put the American Football League on par with the National Football League. The NFL had a hot property. The Super Bowl would go on to become a national non-holiday holiday and is the most watched TV event of the year in the United States. About 140 million people watching it. Pales in comparison to India-Pakistan cricket. They get 600 million to watch that. But in the United States, it's a big number. And Joe Namath had everything to do with it. And he's in the Hall of Fame because he won one game. But it was the important game. And he changed American culture. Lou Michaels had no idea that the chance barroom showdown with Barroom Showdown with Namath would on the 5th of January 1969 would lay the foundation in turning the Super Bowl into a national obsession. That's last year. That's Pat Mahomes, the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's Andy Reid getting the Lombardi Trophy. Now, if you go to the Green Bay Packer Hall of Fame, or you go to the Jets lobby, or probably Kansas City's lobby, you will see a Tiffany Trophy, American Football League, National Football League Championship Trophy winner. Lombardi's name is attached to this after the 1970 season. after he dies. He passed away from cancer. What you probably don't know about Lombardi, and I'm in a book called Lombardi's Left Side about Herb Adderley and Dave Robinson, and I interviewed Adderley, and the author Royce Boyle said to me, "Can I have that interview? And I'll send you a whole bunch of books." I said, "Sure, why not? It's old stuff anyway." But I found this out in the book, although I had heard about it. He was a civil rights pioneer. By 1967, Green Bay had 13 black athletes on its football team, including All-Pros Willie Davis, Willie Wood, Dave Robinson, Herb Adderley, Bob Jeter. He also had gay players on his team. His brother was a Catholic priest, Tom, and he was gay. Oh, by the way, getting back to New Orleans at this point, the first year, 1967, they had 10 African-American players on their team in New Orleans, just 2 years after the boycott. Queen Mary, the Queen Mary, San Pedro, California, Long Beach. And behind the Queen Mary is a Princess cruise ship. I speak on cruise ships, and I spoke on that one. This is from 2015. And it is the Queen Mary where the Super Bowl parties first start. My friend Shelley Saltman, who I've mentioned from Boston, had been in the 1970s. Oh, he was a powerhouse in Los Angeles as a sports executive. He promoted Ali Frazier. He, in 1973, would promote the Battle of the Sexes between Bobby Riggs and Billie Jean King, Evel Knievel's jumps and all. And he was telling me about the Queen Mary and how anybody who was around Hollywood at that time was at this party. And the word leaked out, and people said, "Hey, wait, they can have a party. Why can't we?" Begins a new Super Bowl era, parties surrounding the game. Now, what you don't know about me is I worked with that guy in the middle, John Madden, for about 15 years on a syndicated radio show. The show, 2 shows actually, they lasted 2 minutes in duration. And it was me who got the story ideas and all that other stuff. Dennis Steele, to John's left, your right, was one of the producers. And the producers are supposed to tell the talent, me, what to do, but they never did. But John, I worked with John for 15 years, so it's party time, and let's take a look at the party. I don't have a telestrator here, but without a telestrator, I think I could get away with it. Hey, you got your burgers there, you got your chips there, you got your wings over there. Hey, hot dogs over there. You got cups, which means you must have something to drink. Hey, cake, that's good. Hey, look, there's ketchup, there's mustard. Ketchup and mustard. Where's the rye bread? We need some rye bread here because I can't have a ketchup and mustard sandwich without the rye bread. It's the party. Party time. Party time. I don't know about this year, but it's a big deal, the party time. Every community in America is touched by the Super Bowl as stores sell big screen TVs. Supermarkets have super sales, never Super Bowl sales because the name's trademarked, and they'll get in trouble if they say Super Bowl sales. However, if NFL marketing partner can use the Super Bowl name and on their products. So you'll see that within the supermarkets. There is such a thing as the Beer Institute. Lori Levy years ago was the lobbyist for the Beer Institute, and we went out and she told me about how big a party day the Super Bowl really is. Second biggest food consumption day of the year behind Thanksgiving in non-COVID times. Oh, my wife got, she's on her phone the other day and she gets the sales at Costco on the phone. She said, look. Big screen TVs, super sale, big screen TVs. I said, yeah, I told you about that. That's part of my talk. She said, that's why I told you about it. The big game in you, according to the National Electronics Dealers Association, sales of large screen TVs increased 500% during Super Bowl week because the event increases demand for television sets to watch the big game. Beer here. There you go. There's a keg of beer. And let's get back to Lori Levy here for a second. The Beer Institute has data that suggests the Super Bowl is one of the 7 biggest sales days of the year, only behind Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Eve, 4th of July. Maybe more, depending on the year. Could be more this year if people stay at home and decide to have some beers during the game. New Year's Eve. Super Bowl has surpassed New Year's Eve as the biggest party day of the year in the United States. Newspapers sell advertising for special Super Bowl sections. The Super Bowl is a moneymaker for supermarkets, department stores, snack food managers, breweries, restaurants. It's also the springboard for companies to start their annual TV, radio, and print advertising campaigns. The actual game probably takes a back seat to everything else. In fact, I'm listening to the All News radio station as I was out today driving around, WINS, and the woman doing business was talking about some companies actually previewing their commercials yesterday and talking about their commercials for Sunday. So it's a big news story, the commercials, and here we are on Wednesday, and this is what, 4 days before the game, and they're talking about the commercials within the game. The big ad, the Coca-Cola ad from 1979, that was done down the road from me over at the old Mount Vernon Stadium that's been knocked down. Mean Joe Green, Pittsburgh Steelers, walking off the field, dejected in the commercial, and the kid is yelling at him and then offers Coca-Cola, and everybody's happy, and they live happily ever after. That is still the #1 commercial of all time. Oh, Namath. Namath, he, after the Super Bowl, he has a show with Dick Schaap and Louisa Moritz. He also does a Noxzema commercial with Farrah Fawcett. He's in a movie with Raquel Welch. Big man around town. He does a pantyhose commercial for Hanes. And a couple of years ago, a woman said, two women actually said to me, can we see his legs? I said, you don't want to see his legs now. He's 74 years old. He's had knee replacements and all that. She said, no. We want to see him in the pantyhose. I said, you really want to see him in the pantyhose? Yeah, we do. We really do. Gym shorts and pantyhose. Joe Namath, Hanes commercials. And now Jimmy Walsh, his agent since 1964, has been doing Medicare coverage helpline. Hey, I'm happy I called. Get everything you're entitled to, dental, eye plan, and all. Tell them Joe sent you. That's a long way from Raquel Welch and Farrah Fawcett, isn't it? Some of the best commercials, the Coke commercial, 79, Apple Computers, Sledgehammer, Pepsi, Coke guy takes a Pepsi in 96, Tabasco, Mosquito Tabasco sauce, 98, 3D Doritos, 98, Budweiser. Budweiser is not advertising in this year's Super Bowl. First time in 37 years. Why? They're putting that money to COVID-19 relief efforts. Reebok, Terry Tate, office linebacker, and when Betty White was a mere child of 88, she just had her 99th birthday last week, she was in a Snickers commercial with Abe Vigoda. The Arizona problem, Tempe, Arizona. Bill Bidwell moved his St. Louis Cardinals football team to Phoenix and Tempe in 1988. Phoenix and Tempe are side by side in Arizona. And he walks into a problem not of his making. The problem of his making here is that attendance at his games are terrible, and the NFL decides to throw him a bone, the 1993 Super Bowl, with the hope that people will buy tickets and get into a lottery to get a Super Bowl ticket in 1993. So it's the hope to boost sagging attendance in Tempe, March of 1990. But there was a major problem. The Arizona governor in 1987, new governor Evan Meacham, decided that the holiday should be canceled. The holiday signed into law by Ronald Reagan. Bruce Babbitt, who is the Arizona governor in 1986 by executive decree, an executive order said we're celebrating the holiday. Meacham overturned that. Bidwell walks into Tempe in 1988, and the NFL has a problem. Martin Luther King and the big day. The performers, Stevie Wonder announced that he would boycott performing in Arizona, along with other performers. Convention planners also say, you know what, we're not coming to the state. The battle is on. And by 1990, the NFL is in the middle of it. In 1990, after 1998, state legislators passed legislation to create a state holiday. Opponents managed to get enough signatures on a petition to get voters in the state to decide whether or not to honor King, November of 1990, election day. Well, the NFL said, okay, here's our deal. You say yes to Martin Luther King Day, we'll give you the Super Bowl. You say no, we pull the Super Bowl. Well, the voters said no. The NFL pulled the Super Bowl, sent it to Pasadena, California. There would be a redo in 1992. 1992, Clinton, Perot, and Bush running for president. And the NFL said, hey, voters, listen to us this time. We'll give Tempe the Super Bowl in 1996 if you say yes to the holiday. It's a presidential election year. More voters are out. They say yes, and the NFL gave Tempe the game. The anthem, Whitney Houston's anthem, 1991 Super Bowl in Tampa. The anthem that everybody compares to. Great anthem. Real or on tape? If you want to answer that, real or on tape, let me know. I'll give you 5 seconds, and then I'll give you the answer. Okay, let me give you the answer here. No, you know what? I won't give you the answer. I'll let Jim Steig give you the answer. Jim Steig was in charge of putting together many Super Bowls, an old friend of mine. In early January 1991, our coordinator of Super Bowl pregame activities, Bob Best, produced a recording of the Florida Orchestra, national anthem producer Ricky Minor. A week later, Minor flew to Los Angeles to have Whitney record the vocal track. Amazingly, it was done in one take. 2004 game, you should remember this up in New England because, well, Patriots won the Super Bowl 32-29 over Carolina. Most people don't remember the Patriots even being in this game. And you can see here, Janet Jackson is kind of hiding something in this picture. There's Justin Timberlake on the right, Janet Jackson on the left. The costume malfunction at halftime of the 2004 game became a political football and changed how radio and TV presented programming. ABC showing of Saving Private Ryan was impacted. Easter Sunday, 2004. After the Super Bowl incident, Michael Powell and the Federal Communications Commission dug in. Who's ever in the White House controls the FCC. It was Republican control because George W. Bush was in the White House. And they started going after other areas like hockey games. Was a hockey game suitable programming between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. daily? Well, I don't know. Yeah, they did know. There's a fight on every play in football. There are 5 fights on every play in football, maybe 6, maybe 7. Hockey, once in a while you have a fight. They didn't bother with that. The FCC did bother with fines. Justin Timberlake grabbed Janet Jackson in a dance routine, which accidentally forced her dress to open, and that revealed one of her breasts. That 9/16 of a second left an impression. Now, wait a minute. That's faster than the blink of the eye. How could you see it? Nobody saw it. But through technology, AOL Instant Messaging, Yahoo Messenger, or whatever Hotmail was doing at that time, or Pal Talk, there were a whole bunch of things out there. People started talking, hey, did you see what I saw at halftime? No, what'd you see at halftime? You know that thing with Janet Jackson? Yeah, I know that thing with Janet Jackson. You have TiVo? You have TiVo. Hey, go back, rewind it, and go as slow as you can. Slow, 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 slow. Oh, there it is. There it is. There's the picture. There's the picture. And it went like wildfire on social media, before Facebook, before Twitter. Politicians immediately derided Viacom CBS and Viacom CBS MTV unit, which produced the halftime show. Within 15 hours, politicians gathered on the steps of the Capitol in Washington, pointing a finger at Jackson and CBS for promoting something immoral. The hammer would come down on Viacom CBS. The Republican Federal Communications Commission majority got involved, fined Viacom CBS $550,000, changed the decency rules. Viacom CBS fought the fines for 7 years and won. They paid more in lawyers' fee. What was the principle of all of it? Saving Private Ryan was scheduled to be shown on Easter Sunday, 2004. Steven Spielberg film, Tom Hanks. Saving Private Ryan, Edward Burns, Matt Damon, Tom Sizemore. The Mission is a Man. 66 stations, mostly in the American South, said we're not showing it. Why? Because the FCC raised the amount stations and networks could be docked for what could be termed as questionable images and dirty words. And the owners didn't want to pay more fines or fines at all because they were not owned and operated by Disney ABC. So the affiliates decided we're not showing this because of foul language concerns. The TV stations didn't want to risk the fine. Saving Private Ryan won 5 Oscars following the 1998 release. It had been on ABC, Disney ABC, Easter Sunday 2001, Easter Sunday 2002. Military and veterans groups were furious with the stations. ABC, Disney, the parent company, offered to pay the fines of the 66 stations if the FCC decided to dock them. In the 2 prior showings of Saving Private Ryan, there was only 1 foul language complaint. But it changed TV. Safe act, Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney was busted in Tokyo for drugs, for pot in 1980. Spent 9 days in jail. His bandmate, John Lennon, couldn't leave the United States because he didn't know if he was ever going to get back in here because of a bust in London. George Harrison had problems after a drug bust getting around, and Ringo Starr went to rehab, alcoholic rehab in 1988. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band was acid fuel, but McCartney's a safe act. I'm not even going to talk about the Rolling Stones. All I have to do is mention Keith Richards, but safe act. The Who, 2 of the 4 members, founding members of The Who. The drummer, Keith Moon, and the bassist, John Entwistle, dead from drugs, Entwistle from coke, Keith Moon from a prescription drug he was using for dieting. But it had a bad reaction. He also did a lot of drugs. More Than a Game, Bruce Springsteen, Mariah Carey, Michael Jackson, Madonna, Prince, Justin Timberlake, Beyonce, Paul McCartney, the Rolling Stones, The Who, Whitney Houston, Lady Gaga have performed during the halftime shows, pregame shows, also the anthems. There's no more Up With People. It's more than a game. Super Bowl. American culture changed because of Joe Namath. Super Bowl, last time that you have a chance to win back all the money you lost during the football season. One last go at it during the Super Bowl. It's a political force as well. You could make some changes as well because of the Super Bowl, like in Arizona or on television. But it's also the biggest party day of the year now in the United States. I want to thank Roberta for inviting me. And if we have any questions, any comments, let me know, and I will see what I can answer. Anybody? Take down the screen share. Anybody have anything to say? Can't hear you, Roberta.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you. All right. I just said a lot of history that I had no knowledge of. Very, very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know if this recorded or not. If it didn't record, I'll just give you another one that I recorded somewhere else. It doesn't look like it recorded, but I'll give you another one. I'll give you the one from earlier today because it's the same one as well. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yeah, we look forward to baseball.
Yeah, baseball in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's totally different. That's, you know, I used to speak at Yogi Berra's museum, and there's a lot of yogi in there, an awful lot of yogi in there. And so we'll talk about yogi. I used to speak at his museum, and after every talk, he would pat me on the back and say, "Good job, kid, good job." So anyway, thank you, Roberta, for inviting me, and thanks everybody else. And like I said, if this didn't record, I'll just send you another one because I'm doing this. I did the same one this morning, exact same one. So wouldn't make much of a difference. Was this live, by the way, on your local?
No. I wanted to get the recording so I could put it on our.
I'll get you a recording. I'll just take off the beginning of the recording from the other one and send you that if that didn't work. So, okay, thank you. And we'll see you in 3 weeks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.